Okay, everyone, welcome back to the Divine Romance Podcast. I'm so thrilled to be here with my beautiful sister and colleague and sister in Christ as well, Rose Ellen. And you pronounce. I apologize. I should have asked you this before, but how do you pronounce your last name? I don't want to butcher it.
Schultz. Schultz.
Schultz.
Yeah.
Okay, beautiful, Schultz. And I'm so excited to dive in with Rose Ellen around all things biblical womanhood, her reversion to the Catholic faith. As many of you know, I am a convert as well, and it's like such a topic, and it's such a rich, rich tradition that is so alive within me, as I'm sure it is within you as
Yeah.
well. And yeah, I really wanted to dive in with her around the subject of biblical polarity, which is something you've been talking a lot about in your work, and how to really be the wife that God has designed us to be and have these beautiful, thriving unions and marriages with our beloved. So, welcome, Rose Ellen. I'm so excited to have you on the podcast.
Yes, I'm so thrilled to be here. I feel delight.
I love that. I feel delight as well. So, may I ask you, could you just share a little bit about about your journey with us, and like who you are, maybe how you got to this place of doing that work that you do with women, and a little bit about that work.
Sure. Yeah, I'd love to. So I guess, like most of us, I imagine, who have found themselves in this position of, teaching or coaching or mentoring um, other women or, people, it's been a lot to do with my own personal journey. So I kind of started out, I've had various different career paths through my life. But at a certain point, I suppose, as well, when, it became so much more accessible to be online and to, speak with women online rather than go physically to places. It just opened up a whole new world for me in terms of just starting up my own business in this way. I transitioned through being a professional actress, being an academic. I received my PhD in theatre. And then I turned my work in the theatre to working for restorative justice within the prison system in both Ireland and the USA. Worked in with prisoners inside and outside of the prisons using theatre to address issues of social justice. And then transitioned into a career back in the north of Ireland when I returned back to the north of Ireland to work with victims and survivors of the Troubles here in Northern Ireland. So, anyone that knows anything about the north of Ireland knows that there's been a civil war going on here since the late 60s, and it's definitely a lot better now. There's been a very successful peace process. But yeah, I was working there, and then, it just started to feel I was working through a lot in my personal life within my marriage. Sorry, my little ring light keeps going off, and I'm just like, I'm gonna just leave it at a certain point and just it's just like, stay on, please, just stay on. Um, so it's just, I was working myself just very deeply in this realm of feminine energy embodiment, feminine communication, feminine, just really, going through the dark night of my soul, like for a long time. And then, ultimately at a certain point, it just felt like a very natural transition to start to share the work, to start to teach it, to teach what I'd learned, to teach what I'd embodied, to share with other women, you know, who were on a similar journey, and just potentially, I felt like I could help, and I really wanted to share. So it definitely was a calling.
Hmm. I love that so much. So, if you don't mind, if I don't like probe a little bit deeper here,
Okay.
'cause I'm so curious, like if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit more about perhaps that dark night of the soul, or if there was a moment in your marriage where you were like, something's not working here. There's
Yeah.
some way of me being, or the way that I'm being, or the way that I'm interacting or engaging with my husband, or just being with him, that
Yeah.
perhaps was not yielding the kind of fruitful, harmonious, beautiful dance that we all dream of as women.
Yeah.
What was
Yeah.
your breaking point? Because I feel like we all have one.
Yeah, I mean, there's really two clear, you know, chapters to this. Well, there's many chapters, but there's two very clear turning points for me in this journey. And the first one was actually before I even was married, before I even met my husband. I was a single mother with two gorgeous boys, and I was, in my 30s and working at, working on my PhD. I kind of had this, I had this sense of self-confidence where I kind of objectively knew or thought that I was like attractive, that I was intelligent, that I was, smart, funny, like I felt like I was probably a kind of a bit of a catch, even
Sure.
though I was a single mother. Like for me, that didn't impact my sense of self in a way. I thought, well, if you love me, you'll love my children, and that's it. Like I had quite a bit of like sass, I'm with my kids, if you want me, you've got my kids, like deal with it. And I I could not understand why none of my relationships worked out.
Mm.
It was just so much heartbreak, drama. And it was either that I was in love with somebody who wouldn't commit, couldn't commit to me, was stringing me along, there was booty calls. There was times when it seemed like it was all going to go right. It didn't. There was arguments, there was, breakups. That was one scenario, or the other scenario was I was connecting with men who would fall for me and would want to give me the world, and I wasn't attracted to them. I couldn't fall in love with them. I was like, I don't and I went down a major rabbit hole at that point where I just thought, look, the common denominator here is me. I need to really work out what's going on with me. And that was when I went into a very deep, I was literally on my knees in the kitchen floor crying, like literally on my knees crying in the kitchen floor as a single mother with two children, looking down, like heading into my, late 30s, going like, this is not what I want. Like I want a husband. I want to be married. I really, really wanted that. And so I really went into a very deep inner reflection, and it opened up a lot of just opened up so many doorways for me. And I like delved into the things like the father wound was huge for me. My relationship with my father, massive. That was huge for me. And mother wound as well, inner child work. And then it just opened up a world to me around feminine energy, around how I'd been operating. Like I talk about those years as my Sex and the City years. Like they were my role models. I thought, that was my sort of therapy. And I was very much operating in many different ways that I realized retrospectively were doing me absolutely no favors in creating the relationship that I wanted. So I did a lot of work around then, and then sort of skipping through all that quite quickly. And I was into manifestation at the time as well, I have to say. I was very into, I was right on the cusp of my new age immersion. And I did get very much into the law of attraction. And I've always very sort of proudly said that I manifested my husband. I manifested him. And my first program that I ever taught as a coach was the Soulmate Manifestation Program, because I was like, I've done it, it works. Here you go. And I've brought quite a few women through that program. Um, and yeah, then, that was like a fairy tale. My husband proposed, but it turned out that I'd already known him several years previously, and we'd actually worked together. But he had been married at the time, and I was with the father of my two children in a relationship. And so it was totally professional. We worked together in the theater, but we reconnected on Facebook. And he in the early 2010, it was like 2009 or something, not that it really matters in terms of years, specific years, but we reconnected, and he was at the latter stages of a divorce, and I was single, and so we reconnected on Facebook just as friends, and it really grew from there, and um, ultimately, it became romantic, and he proposed to me in Florence, Italy, at the foot of the statue of Michael D'Angelo. And
That's incredible. My husband proposed to me in Florence as well. I'm not sure you knew that, but
that, like that, you can't make that up. You can't make
that's
that up.
so fun. So fun. Yeah.
And yeah, and then, we got married in a cornfield in Wisconsin. Um, and it was a dream come true, like in so many ways. He was like, I love you and your children. They will be my children as much as, it was just everything that you want to hear. And he bought us a gorgeous house in Chicago, a beautiful heritage bungalow in the outside in a neighborhood in Chicago, and we moved over there, and I moved over there with my children, my two boys. Um, but this is the second big turning point, was like the honeymoon period did not last very long. Like, we were having huge blow up fights very fast. I mean, it was bad, very big blow up fights that were devastating. We would say awful things to each other, and we would sometimes the arguments would last days and days. Like, I remember in those early days even sitting up all night arguing. It was just so devastating to have gone through all of that journey, that hero's journey, to have a fairy tale happen that then was just very quickly. I mean, the only thing that was really a saving grace in those early days was that we definitely knew how to rupture and repair. We both knew how to do that, but it was very painful. But we would always come back to love and actually, bliss and happiness and joy. So that's why, it was sustainable in a way, but it became clearer to me as the years went on, and we had a baby, we had a little baby together. And it was just, this pattern was continuing with these blow up arguments. And so I went down another rabbit hole of seeking and searching, and this is when I just went deeper and deeper into the feminine energy, polarity, the masculine, the feminine energy dynamics, and what my role was in creating this dynamic. And I've always, the arguments themselves were, of course, quite often filled with blame on both sides. And that's how I felt in the moment, and actually how I felt a lot of blame throughout, the early days. But ultimately, I do feel like grace and compassion for myself, because I can put my hand on my heart and say that I always look inwards at where I'm co-creating this. And
Amen.
so that's where I then went into this other deep journey of searching into what's going on here. Like, why is this happening, and how can I look at my own side of the street in it?
Wow, I love that. So you had like two breaking points, like one while you were dating and one while you were after you were already married. I wanted to just dig a little bit deeper because I'm so curious, because I feel like it may shed some light on some women, either whether if they're in the dating stage of their journey to finding their husband, or if they've been married for a while and they're encountering the same things that you've been encountering, like these big blowout fights, or just maybe the rupture and repair cycle, but never really just having that sort of steady harmony and peace that, I believe that is possible for us in marriage.
Yes.
Like, because I experienced that, and it's so much better now than it was, a few years ago when I was still figuring these things out. So I'm curious, like, when you were dating, what were some of the patterns that you found within yourself that you shifted, or you were like, wow, I'm doing this, or this is me, right? Like, there's something about the way that I'm showing up.
Yeah.
You mentioned you were like sassy, or like whatever it is. Like, I'm so curious if you would, like, specifically when you were dating, like what were some of the patterns or the ways of being with men that
Yeah.
that were kind of like evoking or eliciting the same disappointing results that you were getting and just not attracted. Like I so relate to your story around like, oh, you weren't, you attracted men that you like, there just wasn't this mutual, like either they were super into you and they just
Yeah.
were like give you the world and you were like not
Yeah.
attracted to them, or you were super attracted to them and they were not
Yeah.
there for you, right?
Yes,
I
right on.
just so relate to that. I think so many women can as well. So what
Right.
were like some of the shifts you made specifically when you were dating that got you out of that kind of sassy mode and into that like that feminine energy mode that allowed you to attract your husband?
Yeah, I mean, wow, like I could talk about this for hours. I could probably write a book about this because there's so much to it. I mean, I definitely feel that I had to do the inner work that went right back to my childhood to be able to work out like what was actually going on for me in terms of even the kind of men that I was attracted to. So, like, I could talk about that, but I think I just want to say first before I kind of well, it's really present with me is that what I kind of realized in a nutshell, essentially, is that I had a lot of self-confidence and sass, but I did not have feminine self-worth. That is it. And I've just got like all over truth bumps. And I actually kind of feel like emotion, like I almost even want to cry a little bit saying that because, I just feel that in my whole soma that and I because I feel so much sadness, for how long I operated in that way. And I'm also aware that there's still residues of it, like I'm not a finished product. So that can still come up for me.
Mhm.
This is the major piece. So I think throughout my childhood and all the way through my, formative years, I developed this persona who was able to speak up for herself. It's the whole kind of programming. I mean, I personally talk about it as the masculinized, traumatized, programmed pain body. Those are the
Mhm.
kind of main, words that resonate with me about many women that by the time they reach a certain age and stage in their lives, they've become masculinized, they're traumatized, they're programmed, and they're in their pain body. And so I was very, outspoken, sassy, jokey, confident, but I didn't have this inner feminine self-worth. So because I didn't have the feminine self-worth, I was attracted to men who were like treat them mean, keep them keen type men. Even though he wasn't, I don't think they were doing that on purpose. It was just they were keeping me at an emotional, at an arm's length. Um, and yet there was a part of me, it was because my self-worth wasn't online that it was almost like that was all I deserved. But also there was the thrill of the chase or something. And it was
Mhm.
because, and there was a whole kind of a cultural aspect to this where I was craving this bad boy. And I know that's quite common as well. And it was like the nicer guys, they were like too nice. The nice guy syndrome, maybe, but also it was because my feminine self-worth was not, and my nervous system did not have the capacity to receive adoration. Like I just didn't have the capacity to receive adoration. So I um pushed it away. I pushed it away and I chased this morsel, these breadcrumbs, probably because they were all I could digest. And so I was just caught in this cycle where, I just wasn't able to receive the goodness that the good man wanted to give me. Now, looking back on those men that I wasn't actually attracted to, I definitely believe they weren't the right man for me. I just hadn't, there wasn't the right polarity levels weren't there. Those relationships were maybe never going to work, but I really had to look deeply at my receptivity and the kind of men I was attracted to and why I stayed in a relationship for 5 years where he was just, it was on, off, on, off. that was my feminine self-worth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow, this is so rich, this conversation. Thank you so much for sharing all this, because I feel like whoever's listening to this, hopefully is having lots of like light bulb moments.
Yes.
Yeah, so I would love to dive into this distinction between the feminine self-worth and the masculinized, traumatized pain body, or perhaps that sort of bravado of confidence or sassiness or attitude or whatever that's can be more of like a projection, or it's
Yeah.
like it's almost like a facade sometimes of how we've been conditioned to be as women,
Yeah.
versus this just feminine self-worth of like, this is who I am, and this
Yeah.
I know my value, and it's not like I'm worth, I'm a queen, I'm a
Yes.
daughter. It's not like this like
Yeah.
sassy, like
Hmm.
shaking your fist, right?
Hmm.
But it's like, this is who I am, and I'm just receptive and vulnerable and undefended, and I can just receive men and take them as they are, and really discern from that place what is right for me and what is not right for me. So I'm wondering if you could, in your own beautiful words, Rosalind, is just like describe this distinction between the feminine self-worth and sort of that confidence, perhaps, that you had been conditioned into.
So the confidence for me, and what I've seen with like a lot of my clients and friends, is often coming from a place of trauma. It's coming
Mm.
from woundedness. And so, I mean, in my own personal journey, I was able to track it right back to early childhood. So I could see very clearly that I had grown up with a father who, was on his own journey and could be very much in his wounded masculine energy, and he could be verbally abusive towards, my mother, towards me, very, and I, as a little girl, very quickly, looking back now, I can see that I made a decision that I think when somebody is sort of faced with a kind of an aggression, a little girl, you make a decision not consciously, but quite often we're going to go one way or the other. We're going to stand up for ourselves and fight back, or we're going to become very meek and quiet and be afraid to say anything. So I call this like the doormat. There's like a doormat. There's a spectrum. So the spectrum is, there's like on the one end of the spectrum, there is like the aggressive badass, ain't nobody gonna speak to me this way, and the aggression, right? And I call that the wounded masculine energy. And on the other end of the spectrum, there is, I'm not going to say anything, and my voice is closed down. I can't speak for myself, and that is like the doormat energy. That's very wounded feminine, and that is the energy that opens a woman up for all kinds of abuse and predatory behavior. And
Yeah.
in the middle of this spectrum, the sweet spot is feminine self-worth. That's the
Beautifully
sweet
said.
spot.
Mm.
That is the absolute sweet spot. So obviously, most women aren't on the extremes, but there actually are quite a lot of women on the extremes. There are,
Mm.
there are women, and I definitely was veering towards this end of the extreme, where, so with growing up with a father, who, by the way, I absolutely feel so much admiration and love for my father now. He is my absolute hero. So that was a big work that I did, was forgave my father completely for what I experienced as a little girl. Because I recognized his journey, and he also did a lot of reparation himself, and there was so much redemption um, and recognition across the board. So yeah, I always want to say that when I talk about my father, because he is my hero now. But being real, like, that is what I experienced. And then I experienced the same thing at school. I was bullied at school. I was a like a there's a whole lot of personal history there. I was actually a Catholic at a Protestant school, and in Northern Ireland, that's very significant. And so there was some kind of bullying around that. There was bullying around, I was quite small, petite for my age. I was naturally quite shy and modest, but I know that I had a fierceness and a passion. but it all became like inverted into just having to stand up for myself because I was being bullied. And
Mm.
I learned to speak up for myself. I learned to be verbal and I learned to be quite aggressive, energetically aggressive. And then you've got all that. And then you've also got all of the societal feminist programming about you're meant to be this sassy, independent woman who can do everything and who should do everything. And ain't no man gonna mess with me, RESPCT, right? So like this is a huge cocktail that
Yeah, it's a perfect storm. It really is. It
yeah.
is. Yeah.
Yeah. And so
Mm.
by the time you get into, romantic relationships, from the earliest age, I was inside just this little girl who had no idea who I was supposed to be, what I was supposed to do. I didn't, and also there were very few role models to show us how to show up in this just as ourselves. So I just think as ourselves without all of this, all of these layers of conditioning and trauma and programming and this
Yes.
armor that we build.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
to get to the place where you are just in your feminine self-worth, like authentically, it does not happen like that. I mean, it is profound inner work. It is gritty, it is real, it is like lengthy. You can have lots of like I've had so many light bulb moments, but I mean it's taken years and years for
Mm.
for us to shed the armor, the trauma, the programming, all of the conditioning to find yourself in this place where you can just have access to your inherent innocence. It really is a return to
Mm.
innocence of that little girl. It's a return to innocence, and that is where the feminine self-worth comes in, the innocence. That's where the radiance starts to come through, the receptivity, and that's I mean, I don't know if I've explained that, in the way that you'd asked the question, but that's what was coming through
Um,
for me.
it's so beautiful and so deep and so rich. And yeah, it's like who we really are, that innocence, that pure child in the inside of us. That is the feminine self-worth that you're speaking of. It's not all these other, it's not it's not these like survival tactics or these sort of these programs that we've inherited from our family of origin or the culture from feminism, whatever, but it's like the truth of who we are as women, as as feminine women.
Yeah.
And how much it takes, there's so much dismantling and so much de-armoring and so many layers that need to kind of be unwound within our psyche and within our body to be
Mhm.
able to access that core of who we truly are as women, and to be able to express ourselves truthfully without blame or projection or judgment or criticism, right?
Yeah.
But at the
Yeah.
same time, not like blow up at a man. So I'm
Yeah.
wondering how like feminine communication or feminine expression weaves into all of this as well, because I know that's something you talk about a lot
Yes.
in your work. And how does a woman in her true feminine self-worth like express herself to like either evoke the best within her man, or to, you could say, get her needs met, or to feel heard, to feel seen, to create the kind of dynamic she desires in her romantic relationships.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, this has been such a long journey for me. Like, I think I probably started to learn feminine communication at least 10 years ago, but it wasn't called that then. It wasn't, it's become an actual terminology now, which I love. I love that we're actually talking about feminine communication and masculine communication. I find it so incredibly helpful. Um, but it's just, it is definitely a journey of awareness and learning. So I really believe that it's not something that most modern women are not going to speak like this naturally. It's not something that many women will have a natural adeptness at, or even like an understanding of.
Mm.
Most women are just we're just a lot of women who aren't involved in this work or this inquiry, of course, they're just speaking the way that they've learned naturally to speak. And it's quite often is in our modern day society, it is quite a masculine form of communication, just generally across the board. And this is where we talk about, this is where the actual rubber meets the road in a way with the what we get into the relationship dynamics, because quite often what you have are women using masculine communication, a man and a woman both in their masculine energy using masculine communication. This is what's going to cause the big blow ups quite often and the conflict, because you've got, horns locking, fighting with each other because you're both in masculine energy, you're both using masculine communication. Or the other side of that can also be where a man is using in his feminine energy, using feminine communication, and then the woman is, sometimes you can end up with maybe a woman is also using maybe in her wounded feminine um energy, and then that can become very like roommates not lovers vibes, right? Best friends, not the passion. So there's this is what I just love about the masculine and the feminine energies. Because once you start to understand these dynamics, I think I actually think that you do need to have a theoretical understanding. And then you need to like actively relearn. It's like learning a new language. I've honestly likened it to learning a new language. You
Yes.
you need to know the rules, the grammar, the vocabulary, and then you need to practice, and you're going to make mistakes. Like you're going to say it wrong. It's going to, it's not going to come across in the right way. But you have to keep practicing it before you become fluent and embody it.
Mm.
And there are quite a lot of different milestones on this journey for feminine communication, um,
Mm.
because it's not just the words you say, it's the energy and it's the embodiment. Um, and it is going to definitely have a big impact on the masculine, either the man that you're with or the men that you're talking to in the dating world. It makes the difference between whether a man is going to be inspired by you, or he is going to be like competitive towards you, right?
Right.
Or all these other different responses that they can elicit. But the paradox with feminine energy and feminine communication is we cannot be doing this attached to an outcome. That's the paradox.
Mm. That's the
Like,
rub right there, right?
yeah, yeah. But
Yeah.
obviously, realistically, we do want an outcome. Like we want to meet our beloved, we want to become married. I want to have a beautiful relationship with my husband. So, let's not gaslight ourselves and say we don't have an outcome in mind. We do, but we have desires and we have needs. That's
Yes.
the difference. Not like I'm doing this to get this. It's like
Mhm.
I'm doing this for my own personal healing and evolution. And I have a deep desire and a need for my beloved, for my union,
Mhm.
yeah. Um, and yeah, I mean, I could talk more about feminine communication itself, but that to me is just kind of a bit of the
I love
overview.
that.
Mm.
Yeah, could you give us like a specific example of perhaps language that might be like a common desire, a common need that a woman has? You could speak from your own life or a client's life, like, or patterns that you see with women, like a way that she might express herself to a man, kind of from that more masculine way of speaking, that more direct way of speaking, that more perhaps aggressive, tell it like it is way of speaking, versus like that, the feminine, the from that feminine place, that is from this deep place of embodied feminine self-worth. Like, I'm wondering if we could get like into the brass tacks here, like how, like what would be like a specific example?
Yeah, so I mean, what's really coming through for me as you're talking, like, is essentially the main differentiator is that the masculine communication is heady. We're in our head. We're trying to work things out, come up with solutions, analyze things, sort it all out, wrap it all up, talk about it, explain it, analyze it. So this is where women can get into such a bind with their partner, because we're in our head. This is where these big conversations come from, where like I said, my husband and I could be in an argument for days and nights, like all night long. It's because we're in our heads as the woman, trying to explain ourselves, trying to explain how we feel. Not even explain how we feel, but explain what's going on for you. So you could be like, I'm trying to think of like a really simple example. So say for example, I don't know if this is gonna land or if it's even gonna work out, but say for example, the washing machine's broken, right? And your husband, or that what's not getting fixed. You've tried to say to him many times, you're like, you could be like, you will start to become very full of maybe blame and judgment towards him. Like, why can he not sort out this washing machine? This should be up to him. Why should I have to do it? He said he was going to do it. He knows the guy. He's got his number. I don't even have his number. And then so you might start to say all that to him. You might just be triggered. You're like, look, you said you were going to do this. Like, I don't even have the guy's number. Why can you not, like, you told me you were going to do it 2 weeks ago. Like, and then so before you know it, you're in this massive cycle of blame and judgment. And your words are penetrative. They're judging. They're blaming. I mean, and you might not even be even aware. There's an extreme where you are really activated and you're like da 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 da, and you're angry. But there's a more subtle version of where you're just like, it can be, yeah, it can be more subtle. It doesn't have to be that dramatic. Or then the other side of that is that you just do it yourself, right? And this is the other
Mm.
thing that women do. They just take care of it all themselves, because why am I going to spend all my time? Like, by the time I nag him into doing this, I may as well just do it myself. And then before she knows, she's doing everything herself. She's taking care of
Oh,
everything, you know. And again,
well said.
and this is different though in a polarized relationship dynamic where there are like, so there's two things I really are really wanting to sort of say. So yeah, so just to sort of continue that analogy, in feminine communication, the way that a woman would communicate about the washing machine is like, hey, she would share, may I share some, hey, babe, or whatever you call him. First of all, you would check in with a time to talk, right? You wouldn't just ambush him when he comes in from work, or just, ambush him on Saturday morning when you're having coffee. You'd be like, hey, is there a time that we can talk about? May I know if there's a time that we can talk about something that I'm having some feelings about, or I need some help with? He'd be like, sure, go ahead. Or he might say, yeah, maybe later, whatever. So you're permissively asking at the start. That's very important. Permissive permission, asking, speaking permissively is a big part of feminine communication. Then when he
Mm.
gives you that, then he's like, sure, because then you're not, that means you're not being penetrative, right? So much of the time,
Submissive versus penetrative. Yeah, yeah,
yes,
yes.
or flooding. Yeah. Permissive
Mm.
versus penetrative. Yeah. And so then he's going to say, right, so then you go, look, I am having some big feelings about the washing machine. I'm feeling like a lot of fear or anxiety, stress. I'm feeling anger. Like, I'm even telling myself some stories in my head about it. May I have some help? Like, I don't know what to do. May I have some help with the situation with the washing machine? So can you see the difference there in,
Yes, it's like even in my body, like the first one,
yeah,
like I just felt like myself go on guard. I was like, ah, like,
yeah,
and
yeah,
then the second one, I just felt like, yeah, like I just felt my whole heart softening and
right.
my shoulders dropping, and just even in,
Yeah.
as a woman who's, sensitive to this stuff, I can feel the shift in how it feels in both cases, and then it's going to be even more so in his body, because it's like he's going to be more attuned to that,
Yeah.
like that penetration versus that permission.
Yes.
Um, yeah, so beautiful. I love that example, and Okay, this is so good. This is so rich. um, so a couple things I wanted to ask you here. So for a woman who's been married for a while,
Mm.
and she has been, her relationship is not peaceful, it's not passionate, it's not playful. There's a lot of friction, there's a lot of strife, there's a lot of this perhaps butting of heads that you've talked about. There's a lot of maybe that sort of competitive energy of like him against me versus us working together as a team. How, like, what would be like the first step for her to get started? Because I feel like this is, it can be so sometimes almost like daunting, right? Because it's like, oh my gosh, I have to heal my trauma and I have to unwind from my childhood and from the cultural dynamics that are so toxic that, you know, I feel this pressure to be this independent woman, this boss babe, and it's like this perfect storm, right? That we encounter, and then on top of that, it's like, oh my gosh, now I have to learn a whole new language. Like, so
Yeah.
what would be like the first step, would you say, for a woman who wants to go on her journey of discovering her feminine self-worth, um, and begin to relate to her beloved in a whole new way, and begin to um, begin practicing, like get her feet wet in this pool of feminine communication, feminine embodiment, all of the beautiful things. What would you like suggest as the first step?
I mean, you know, I think it is going to look different for every woman. There is
Mhm.
no cookie cutter, you know, this is what, I mean, in some ways, so there are fundamentals and there are essentials that are going to be, um, like I want to say, like universal, you know,
Mhm.
but I definitely think it is going to look different for each woman. So I, I, I sense that a woman who's just really wondering like where am I meant to start,
Mhm.
she would follow her heart to know what is the first step for her. And it could be a book, it could be this podcast, it could be a YouTube channel, it could be prayer, it could be a particular mentor, a particular, you know, course that, you know, she could dive into one-to-one mentorship. She could, you know, she could dive into an online self-study course depending on her and that, you know, what her resource level, her desires, her needs, her the urgency. um but any small step that she's going to take, big or small, she could sign up for like a lot big mentorship, or she could just listen to a podcast, she could just buy a book, she could just start to pray. You know, it just this woman herself on her own course, I think, you know, I would just want to say to her, like, just have faith and trust that this first step you take is the right step. The fact that you even want to take the step in the first place means you've started. And the way will appear then. You know, when the student's ready, the teacher appears, right? And but
Mhm.
ultimately what I'm saying is that she needs support.
Yeah.
We need support, and we need to be taught
Mhm.
how to do this. So I don't really think it's something that we can do on our own. However, where the support comes from, what it looks like can be varied.
Mm. Yes, beautifully said. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think that thing around support is really important for us as women, because it's like, especially if we have that tendency of being figuring out everything on our own, or that like
Yeah.
that hyper independence, it can feel like a really big leap for us to be like, oh, I actually need support, I need formation here. But
Yeah.
so necessary. Now I wanted to dive in a little bit into this conversation on biblical polarity and your return to the Catholic faith, because
Mm.
I, you know, this is near and dear to my heart, and like if we have time, I hopefully we do. But I would love to hear about your reversion, like what brought you back to the faith, and how has that deepened your experience of the, like your journey of becoming a wife and your marriage, and um, deepened your polarity journey and your intimacy journey with your husband?
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
It's a big question, but
It
yeah.
is. It's a big question, and there's just so many elements to it. Um, I mean, I'm trying to think where to start. It's definitely just been a part of my natural evolution. It's all felt very organic, and um it has all felt very organic and natural, but at the same time, again, there's been dark nights of my soul throughout this journey. There's been things that have brought me to my knees,
Mhm.
and it's almost like stepping stones. And I've always been a very intense spiritual seeker from a very young age, and I think like a lot of us yeah, I mean, a lot of women in my field, certainly in my energy field, would be, on similar paths, deep spiritual seekers. So, I I started out as a Catholic, so I'm what they call a cradle Catholic, born into the Catholic faith. My granny would bring me to mass as a little girl. And I just loved going to mass with her because she was my just I just loved her so much that I just trotted along to mass with her. And I would just kind of sit there, and it was just like I was just a little girl, and it didn't really, I was just like, yeah, whatever. And then I just made my sacraments naturally as well, because I was at Catholic schools as a young child. I went to Catholic schools. So um I made my first confession, my Holy Communion, all by the age of 7. And then, though, something quite significant happened for me as a teenager, because it was around that part that things started to fracture. Unfortunately, my granny passed away when I was 9, and that was really traumatic. It was a very sudden and traumatic fracture of the family. My mother really was devastated, but my parents were never practicing Catholics anyway. So it was like that was my main connection to the Catholic faith, and practicing Catholicism was kind of gone when my granny left. So I veered away from it all just naturally again because it wasn't happening within my family. But I remember I was at a Protestant grammar school here in Ireland, and it just came up about, did I want to make my confirmation? Because no, that wasn't happening in the school. It wasn't. I actually had to make a conscious decision as a young teenager. Did I want to do this? And I did. I wanted to do it. And I went and I made my confirmation. And I think it was like as a like a it was, I definitely feel it was my grandmother's, presence and influence. But that was really like the end of it, in terms of any kind of, oh well, it wasn't the end of it, but it was the end of like my conscious practice in Catholicism myself. However, when my two eldest boys were born, we just got them baptized naturally. Like it was just like what you did. It was cultural here in the family to have them both baptized. But by the time my youngest boy came along, I had really dived into like paganism, Wicca. I was really identified with all witchy things. It was all witchy woo woo, and spell. I mean, I had a spell. I had a Wiccan altar. I had a spell. I did spells. I did candle magic. Um, I was really into it. My youngest boy, Anton, he was blessed by a high priestess witch instead of being baptized. So, and he's nearly 10 now. So this was all kind of moving through my experience. And then I honestly think that, well, I was still very much into the law of attraction. I went even deeper into the law of assumption. Now, when I went into the law of assumption, I was very into it for a while, like not that long ago, like within the past 3 to 5 years. I was
What
teaching.
is the law of assumption? Just so.
Yeah, so the law of assumption is almost like, to me, it was like the next level of law of attraction. It took it
Mm.
even more to be like, we are the complete creators of our own reality. Like literally, we are all God. We are all mini gods and we all create our own reality. And it even goes as far as to say like everything is our own creation. It was kind of became a bit trippy where you're like, nothing is real except me and my experience.
Yeah,
I'm
wow.
creating it. And
Uh-huh.
therefore, though, the thing that was, therefore, I can create anything. Like I
Mhm.
can create anything I want. And I really did start to question at that point. And I remember thinking like, but where is God in this? You know, like, because I never stopped believing in God ever. I just
Mhm.
questioned what this kind of um I just deeply questioned like what he was. It a man sitting on a cloud? Like, is it, you know, is it the Bible? Is it the Bible? What's the Bible? I didn't really get it. I was like, I don't understand. But I never stopped believing in God. And so when it went really deep into this law of assumption stuff, I really started to be like, but I don't really feel like I want to be my own God. Like that
Mm.
it was also a lot of pressure. It was
It's
like
a lot of pressure. Yeah.
anything that happens in life, you've created it yourself, bad and good.
Yes.
So it
Yes.
definitely, I got quite tangled up and quite upset a few times because I was like, so like I've created this terrible thing, or like I was talking to a friend and she was like, well, I just like because I'm like, did I just make that terrible thing happen to my neighbor because that's my reality? You know, so woo. And I
Mhm.
was like, oh, and I started to really question God around then again and be like, you know, who is God for me? Like, where am I sitting with all of this? And then I really truly believe that my journey deep into polarity
Mhm.
really opened me back up to the idea of God as like authority and becoming receptive to authority again. Because I was a
Mhm.
rebel. I was like, F you, everything, you know, I do things my way. And that's why all these fights were happening with my husband as well, right? How dare anybody tell me what to do? And, you know, it would be the same with the idea of church, with the idea of any kind of hierarchy. How
Yeah.
dare anybody tell me what to do? How dare I be um, dictated to by anybody about anything? But like in the humbling of myself, in the huge humbling and humility, and you know, like yeah, ego death of humility that it took for me to start to humble myself to my husband. I
Mm.
think that really then started to open up this idea of humbling myself to a greater force and a greater power in general. And then that led me more back into starting to look into Christianity again. And you know, I think I felt like I made this up, but I don't think I did. But it's like any earnest spiritual seeker will inevitably find themselves like with Jesus. Like it's literally just
Totally.
inevitable.
Totally.
And I've got like
Yes. Truly.
hairs
Truly.
on my arm standing up again. It's like,
Yes.
and that's just what it feels like to me. It's like it was inevitable that I would find myself with
Mhm.
Jesus. Although I didn't, obviously it's inevitable in retrospect. It certainly wasn't inevitable to me like at all prior to that. And um so yeah, I think definitely those were two portals where, you know, really questioning this law of assumption and being the God of your own reality. And then also the joy that I was experiencing with humbling myself to, you know, polarity and the reverence that I started to feel for men in general. Oh my gosh, I could get on my knees and weep with the reverence that started to bubble up for me in reverence of men, of the masculine. And I mean like, you know, early stage polarity, I'm just like looking at men going, he's amazing, you're amazing. Look at this guy doing this. Look at that man doing this. Just look at this bus driver. Look at this bricklayer. Look at this. Look at, you know, this, you know, look. And then obviously, you know, your husband, my sons. And that definitely opened the way for this reverence and joy um, to open myself up to to God and Jesus, and then Christianity, then the structure of the church as
Mhm.
well as like a place of containment. a place where I could be contained, where I could go, where I could worship, where I could, please tell me what to do. Just tell me. Tell me what to do. Like, please, may I know? You know, I started to pray to God using feminine communication. And like it was all sort of just vaguely Christian at the start. And then I just started to really desire a place to go, like a church. And I was open to different forms of churches. I definitely wasn't going to be like returning to Catholicism was actually, it took me quite a while to get there. Like I wasn't instantly, I started to think, I think I might want to go to church. I think I might want to actually formalize this. I was longing for it. Like I was aching to have this place to go where I could express my love and also be contained, held, and guided. And and then, I was praying, please may I know, like, where should I go? Like, what church should I go to? And like I was taking my son, my youngest son, to yeah, and actually he's been quite prolific actually in my journey back to God and Christ as well, my youngest son, because he asked for a Bible for his ninth birthday. And he was on his own journey himself. Like it was even, I think, and I know that there's, a lot of stuff said about obviously screens and YouTube and things, but he was having Jesus speak to him on YouTube. Jesus was coming into YouTube on his algorithm, and he was like listening, and he started to ask for a Bible. He asked Claudia, he asked to be baptized. Like my son asked to be baptized. He said, yeah, mom, because you did all that witchy Salem witchcraft stuff on me. I was
You
like,
say,
yeah, I
break
did.
that off. Yeah.
And so this was a beautiful parallel as well, that it was almost like my son was also leading me back to Christ. I
Um,
definitely, it was definitely parallel. So we started to go, I'd always gone over the years, couple of things. I never lost the Hail Mary. The Hail Mary stayed with me my whole life. That was ingrained in my consciousness. I said the Hail Mary like at crucial times in my life when my back was against the wall. That was what came into my mind. I'd also went to various Catholic churches over the years to light candles, just to light a candle. That's all I would do. Go in and light a candle, say Hail Mary, say a little prayer. And so we'd been going to this Catholic church, my son and I, just to light candles. And all of a sudden I was just like, I'll just go to a mass, I'll just see how it feels. I'll just see what it feels like in my body. And oh my gosh, I went and I
mm,
wept,
mm,
not a notice. I mean, it was silent tears, during the mass, but I was just, my whole body was just a full-bodied yes. It was a
yes.
full-bodied yes. And I've gone every Sunday ever since. I made like a first confession. This was my second confession ever. And I said, bless me, Father, for I've sinned. It's been like 40 years since I don't even know how many years, 30, a lot of years since my last confession. Um, so yeah, and this whole journey has just been unfolding since then. Yeah.
Beautiful. I resonate with so much of what you're sharing. And what I really love what you said was like the emptying and the humility and like descent
Yeah.
that we go on with our beloveds when we realize that like all of our tactics, all of our penetration, all of our control, all of our whatever it is that we're doing, right? To try and get what we need from them, right? All of it's well-meaning, but it's coming from this deeply immature, kind of wounded place a lot of the time, right?
Yeah.
Masculinized place. And for me, I definitely resonate with this is like the like kind of like on my knees experiences of like, this is not working. And like getting on my knees and realizing that like I actually like being I like being on my knees. Like in,
Right.
proverbially and physically, like in reverence to him, yes, but also in reverence to God as like masculine and father and beloved, and like having
Yeah.
that experience of, it's such a posture of receptivity and such a posture of vulnerability and such a posture of emptying out and then receiving from God and from Jesus and from the Eucharist, right? It's like, it's so, I'm just getting goosebumps right now, but like, it's so, those journeys, I love the way that your husband and your son brought you back to Jesus and like the church specifically,
Yeah.
because it's like that earnesty of seeking the truth, yes, but then also like just the descent that masculine men can trigger within us, right? Like almost like force, and I don't mean force, but like there is kind of a like, okay, I have to give up control, I have to surrender here, or else it's not gonna work.
Yeah.
It's the same thing of like coming out of the new age, or coming out of this like I am the creator of everything, right? Into
Yeah.
like, no, I'm actually like this vessel
Yeah.
that God can, we can co-create with God. Yes, we can be in prayer with him, we worship him, but we're not in control of him. And
Oh,
just
yes.
love that beautiful, those parallel journeys. I so resonate with
Yeah.
everything you shared.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And just this, the relief then, the flooding relief to know,
Yes.
both with my husband and with God, Jesus, um, the relief to know that I don't have to carry it all by myself. Like it's not all on me, and I'm not always right. Like I
Yes.
I don't have to
Hallelujah.
be right. So much relief. And I saw this beautiful like animation on Instagram reel or something a few days ago, and it was like, control is just like when you're fit, you're like this all the time. And then to release and surrender, it's like it's just this huge relief to our feminine soma. It's our nervous system, our soma, our whole experience is this incredible relief. And then that's how we can flow in our feminine energy. And
Mm.
also to be able to look at God and Jesus as the ultimate authority as well means that, I'm not actually looking at my husband as an idol either anymore.
Let's talk about that. Yeah, because I
Yeah.
think that can be another sometimes perhaps pattern that we fall into of like, oh, now my husband is God, or my husband is like,
Yes.
I'm like worshiping him, and
Yes.
he has to be perfect too, and he has to be this, hyper like alpha, whatever, like, in order for
Yes.
me to submit to him. But like that's
Yeah.
like,
That's
I'm
a
curious
big
if you can
trap.
share a little bit more about that
Yeah.
trap.
It's a really big trap that we can fall into. And, I've fallen into the trap. I've fallen into the trap, especially because, I've been working with masculine male coaches and mentors who are really embodying masculine um, communication, masculine healthy dominance, masculine self-worth. And so I've been, training and working in like an academy with male mentors for a couple of years now. And oh my gosh, the trap that you can fall into where you're comparing your husband to these men, whether they're real men that you're working with, like I have been, or whether it's just the idea, what you've learned is how this man needs to show up. And it's very tricky. It's very I don't know what I'm trying to think of the right word. It's like smoke and mirrors, with all of that kind of because it's actually the opposite of what we're meant to be doing. Like our feminine energy is not judging, it's not comparing him, and it's not expecting him to be perfect. So yeah, that's been a very deep journey for me personally, not to judge him against other men who are, further along the path potentially, or yeah, or we can't hold our men up to this unachievable standard. But I love what you've been talking about, Claudia, you and Jonathan, in some of your material, where you're talking about this, this sweet spot where you have this discernment, so that you're not holding him up to perfection, but you have discernment as to whether or not he's going to be able to hold the field for you, showing up as a woman, and be able to be a provider, be a protector, be in his masculine, while at the same time, yeah, there's a lot.
Not pedestalizing him, not
Yes.
making him God. Yeah, it's so tricky, right? Because it's like we want that perfect masculine man. But I mean, ultimately, what we're looking for is Jesus. Like that perfect man does not exist. Like no matter how
Yes.
perfect he is, even if he knows all of the right polarity moves or whatever, like
Yeah.
he's still a human, right? And that
Yeah.
only that perfect man that we're all searching for, of course, is Jesus Christ. It's like the only perfect man that ever existed. And what a relief again it is to be able to be held by him, so we can take some of the pressure off our
Yeah.
human beloveds, and
Yeah.
like realize that yes, we have this discernment and we have these standards, and we we can calibrate, we can feel into his masculine energy of like, is this somebody that I want to spend my life with? Yes. And we're not going to fall into the trap of making him God, or like
Yes.
putting it all on him, because he's like, as soon as we do that, as soon as we put him on the pedestal, he's going to fall off. He's going to
Yeah.
top it.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. Absolutely. Yeah. And this is why, and this is why, the return to the church and more traditional, even traditional family values, I feel as well, it's so important for for the head of the household, for the man, for the masculine, because it's not all on him either. And he has somebody else that he can, have authority over him, because it's a lot of pressure for a man. It's a lot of pressure for a man to be the leader of everything, right? If he doesn't have his own leader too, so this is why the way that it's set up, and this is what I mean biblical polarity, the way that it has been set up biblically through scripture and through what we've learned, is that there is hierarchy, and that hierarchy is there for our safety and our protection and our nourishment, and for us to thrive in.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that it has been corrupted and misunderstood, is one thing, but we can look at what it is actually meant to be, what it is actually, how it is meant to help us and assist us and transform us, and potentially at least do our best effort, as with what the resources that we have now, to course correct a little bit and bring it back to that beautiful gold standard that has been laid out for us.
Yes, there's such perfection in that hierarchy, like as God designed it. Like it's so beautiful. And I know people may have resistance to the word hierarchy, even, right? Because we're like, oh no, everything needs to be the same, and we all need to be equal, and all these
Yeah.
things. But like the beautiful hierarchy that allows us to feel held and to have that frame, and to like really have the order that brings containment to our feminine nervous systems, and allows us to have the right order in our families, so we can actually have these beautiful harmonious relationships
Yeah.
between men and women, husband and wife. That is just, it's God's design. Again, I'm getting goosebumps. It's God's design for our unions, for marriage. And yeah, it's so, I'm so grateful to have this conversation with you, because I know we've been on such similar journeys, and especially with both of our, going into the church, and like that whole element. And I love also what you said around the church being kind of this frame, or this
Yeah.
source of containment for us, because I feel like sometimes and again, I don't mean this in a judgmental way, but like just in a discerning way, like there can be this element of in Protestantism where it's like, oh, I don't need the hierarchy, I don't need the church, I don't need that. I'm just
Yeah.
gonna, it's just me and Jesus. And like for us to have that the formation, and for us to actually be able to be held by Mother Church, and to also have the priests and the deacons and the bishops and the Pope. It's like it's so beautiful, and it's so It's
Yeah.
just that it mirrors the heavenly hierarchy so beautifully. And it's, for me, it's just like, it feels like such a homecoming.
Yes, yes. And I mean it is for you. I'm sure it is for you and it is for me. And you know, the other thing that I love about my return to the Catholic Church is just it really beautifully complements my feminine mysticism. So
Oh,
everything that I
yes,
was
let's talk about that. Yes, yes, so
you
good.
know, everything that I was searching for in the New Age and paganism and witchiness and candles and you know all of that, like I've
Yes.
been able to take that all with me, but
Mm,
it's just now it's reverential and it has humility and it has deference and you know, it's within a structure that I
yeah.
can you know, that I can, and this is the beautiful thing about all of this when we talk about the feminine and the masculine and polarity and biblical polarity. Ultimately, at its absolute best and highest, the masculine provides the structure and the containment for the feminine to like just explode from, right? To just like a wellspring, like a chalice, like that just flows
Flowered,
over,
yeah.
you know.
Mm,
So that is at its best, and so we are fully expressed, fully self-expressed and radiant in our self-expression, our joy, our feelings, our needs, our desires, our creativity is all like, because I think that, you know, some people think that this containment can be subjugation, it can be oppression, you know, it can be um making us less than, but at its absolute best and most healthy, whether we're talking about, you know, the church or the man, it's actually the opposite. It is bringing us back to wholeness and extremely authentic, just radiant self-expression and creativity. It gives us freedom. Actually, it's freedom and innocence is what it gives us.
mhm,
You
mhm,
know, and that's the part that
mhm.
I think a lot of people can't see from the outside unless they're in it and they're embodied in it.
Beautiful like image that I heard from a priest once is like God's church is like, and like it's like children playing on top of a mountaintop and like just like playing and feeling so free and laughing and being so joyful, and yet there's like this gate around the mountaintop so you don't fall off of it.
Right.
It's like
Yes.
it's very contained, but like there's so much freedom within that.
Yeah. I
And
mean,
like the containment itself creates this freedom, and it's this
yeah,
idea that like, oh, like all of these laws and all of these rules and all of this
yeah,
religion and all of this is all bad, we need to get rid of that. No, it's
yeah,
there to just hold us.
yeah.
It's like to give us containment, it's to allow us to be safe and to have these guardrails so we don't go off into the fall off the cliff.
Yes, which so many of us do and have
Yeah.
completely fallen off the cliff, off our rockers, like whatever, you know, it's like it's really it's definitely complete chaos out there. And
Mm,
so, and it's a lot of there are a lot of lost people, so many lost souls, so many, you know, and it's just such a joy for me to like I'm bringing Jesus and God now into my older son's life. I mean, he's 28. I didn't bring him up with a connection to God at all, or I mean, I think I may have, but I was very much more, yeah. It's just beautiful for me to bring him back and for me to start to talk to him in this way now. And it's not obviously by no means is it too late for me to start to talk to him in this way. And all my children, and like I'm gifting everybody rosary beads now. They're all just getting rosary beads. And you know, I just think Mother Mary as well for the feminine is just so
yes.
unique for us. And I just feel like so close to Our Lady. And
Mm,
you know, she definitely has been with me this whole time. And you know, I don't know if I think I told the story about these rosary beads that were so my husband met
mm.
Saint John Paul um
Oh,
when he was like
wow.
16
Lucky man. Wow. That's
in Rome, and there's a picture of him with him. And he said to me, you know, recently, you know, my husband said to me, I don't know, he said to me, do you remember I gave you those rosary beads like years ago? And this was when I was just returning to Catholicism, and I was like, oh yeah, gosh, I was like, gosh, I wonder where they are. Like, have I still got them? We've moved house loads of times since then. And I found them and I just took them out and I was like, this is a treasure that my husband gave me.
Hmm. Wow.
That was hidden that I didn't
Wow.
even know. And now I have a saint's rosary beads that my husband gave me. And like, it's just, you just couldn't make that up either. You know, it's like,
Yeah.
what? So,
Hmm.
magical, really. So magical and mystical. And yeah, Our Lady, I think she shepherds a lot of us, I think, back into the into the fold, really, with
I
her,
think
with
she does. She's a really good bridge, I feel, to like people in the new age or people who, yeah,
yes.
like
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
who were born the pagan mystical path without the,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So it's
So good. Oh my gosh, I feel like I could have this conversation with you forever. So rich and so
good.
beautiful.
Yeah.
I don't want to take up all of your time here, but like, is there anything else that you'd love to share, either about biblical polarity or these topics that we've dived into so beautifully, like, you know, dating or marriage or like all of these things that we've been discussing?
Um, I mean, there's so much more that I could share, so much specifics. I mean, I think really the only thing I would want to say is that, if anybody is watching this and has watched it has watched it in its entirety to this point, I would just say that you're obviously ready for this work um and reach out to whoever or whatever it is that you're drawn to deepen and to move for to move deeper into this work. And yeah, it's just you're ready, and we welcome you with open arms, into this work. And yeah, just anybody else, just thank you for watching, and thank you for seeing me and us and being here with us. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm. So, so good. Amen. Rosellen, how can people find you? Like, what is the best way to reach out or to, yeah, if they're interested in your work or going deeper with you?
Yeah, so well, I mean, my main platform is Facebook, so you can find me on Facebook. So just click on my name and come onto my page. And I have like a little lead magnet, actually, a little free offering, which is a PDF of feminine communication. So you can sign up for that, get on my email list, and get some, like, the very basics of feminine communication there. And I've got a self-study course. I've got a new self-study course coming out, actually, as well, that I'm working on through autumn. That should be coming soon. Got a new website coming and things like that. And you can work with me, one-to-one mentorship has been my main kind of groove all along. And I've got like different entry levels there. So yeah, you can just reach out to me and, work with me in a number of different ways. I'm on Instagram too. And I got really into TikToks for a while and loved doing little TikToks. So you can find me there too. So yeah.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much. This has been such a gorgeous conversation. Truly, I feel so nourished by it. And yeah, I'm like just honoring you and your journey and like your commitment to the truth and commitment to your, like your marriage. And this is what we stand for over here. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's so, so, so beautiful.
Thank you. It really has been an absolute joy and privilege, Claudia. Thank you so much.
You're so, so welcome.